Hello family and welcome to our church-wide stream. It is so great to have you all with us. Today we are being joined by all 5 campuses. So come on, if you're from Bibra, give yourselves a big shout. From Maddington, come on. Byford, Narrogin and Singleton. So great to have you all here. And today is a really, really special day. It's actually a special milestone because today is our 19th anniversary. So come on, we praise God for that. On Sunday, May 21st, on 2006, about 50 people gathered together at the South Lakes Performing Arts Centre for our first service. And to see what God has done, how faithful He has been, those 50 people, the family has just multiplied and grown. And now we meet in 5 locations. And we've been able together to plant 13 autonomous churches. Isn't that amazing? But more than that, I just think throughout this whole journey, just watching the Lord save people, heal people, and transform lives have made it so amazing. So come on, let's just take a moment to give God a clap of praise and thank Him for His faithfulness. Come on, let's do that together at every campus. So good. Today is also a wonderful milestone for our church because we're fulfilling the last miracle offering project from last year's giving. Most of you would be aware that in 2024, our church put an offer to purchase the historic Uniting Church building in Narrogin. This beautiful 120-year-old chapel has brought so much hope and refuge to the people of that region for generations. And over time, however, the church congregation diminished, the doors closed, and this once vibrant chapel was left to deteriorate. A lighthouse in this city had grown dim. But I'm so excited because of your generosity over the last year, we have been able to purchase, renovate, and today move in to our very own Narrogin facility. Welcome to Centrepoint, Narrogin! Hey, we're going to give you a little bit of a tour of this new house. How amazing, right? And you know, buildings have become increasingly more important in this last season, with more and more schools closing their doors, councils, community halls closing their doors to churches that preach the gospel because of our biblical perspective on marriage and identity. It sort of makes it a little bit more urgent for us to get permanent houses for every one of our campuses. And more than that, I think facilities cause us to become more generationally minded. It's actually really important that we give the next generation generational wealth and asset as church leaders so that they can take more ground for God rather than crippling debt that keeps them limited. There's so much generational history in buildings. When we were putting this building together, the team were telling me how a lady walked into the church in this chapel and she said, you know what? I'm so glad you guys are here. My parents got married in this building. We got married in this building. And now because you're here, I pray our children will be able to get married in this building. What legacy. And we constantly have to keep this mindset of being a generational generational people because we serve a generational God. A big thank you has to go to Pastor Andrea and Nigel, Janice and Boyd and Jono and Lauren, who have led this amazing team to renovate all of this in 45 days. I tell you what, it was a huge task, but with them and along with a whole heap of volunteers, more than 60 plus volunteers, many of whom came from your campuses from Perth, to give a day, to serve, to do the gardens, to paint. Thank you so much. And of course, our Narrogin family, who really put their hand to the plough. We couldn't have done it without you. So why don't we give all of those who served a big round of applause. I have another piece of good news for you before I get into the word, and that was last year's miracle offering projects to sow churches and plant churches in Western Australia. We gave significantly to HarvestNet, and I've got the good news of announcing that in that last 12-month period, we have been able to plant 3 healthy, sustainable new churches in Western Australia. Our newest churches are Thrive Church in South Perth, Capes Community Church in Dunsborough, and of course the Gathering in Bentley. And here's what I love about it. Already these churches have reached the community, people have given their lives to Jesus, and one of them just held their first baptism service with 2 people getting baptized in water. This is what it's all about. And I'm so grateful, church, that you have given so faithfully and so sacrificially so that we can do all of these amazing projects. Last year you gave you pledged $600,000, which is just amazing. But you know what? You outgave your pledges. You ended up giving $635,000, and that is just amazing, completing every single one of the projects that we had in our heart. So with that chapter closed, today we're going to launch Miracle Offering 2025. Why don't you turn your attention to the screens?
Every year in June, something truly powerful happens in our church. We come together not just to give, but to sow sacrificially into something far bigger than ourselves.
We call it our Miracle Offering, and it transforms lives both locally and across the globe. In 2025, we want to invite you to be a part of this special event.
I looked for someone who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land. But I found no one.
The prophet Ezekiel lamented over Israel because the whole nation had turned their backs against the Lord. He cried out for someone to step up, to stand in the gap and help turn God's people back to him. But no one was willing.
No one was willing to answer the call.
No one was willing to pay the price.
No one was willing to stand in the gap.
Many years later, this call continued to ring out over God's people until one day, one man said yes. By faith, Nehemiah bravely stepped into the gap. Using what he had, he dedicated his life to the rebuilding of a nation.
His simple step of obedience stirred up others to rise and do the same. Families came together, communities stood shoulder to shoulder, and everyone brought their gift.
Together, with God's help, they were able to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem in 52 days. This was an impossible task, but with God's help and the people's faithfulness, they were able to do it.
Their sacrifice caused a whole community to turn back to God. It led a whole generation to find hope, healing, and salvation.
But now, here in 2025, the world around us is still hurting. People are still searching, and future generations are crying out for hope.
Just like in Nehemiah's day, God is looking for someone to see the need, answer the call, bring their gift, to stand in the gap. This year, our prayer for you is that you and your family would come ready to make a difference.
Globally, we are going to impact lives with our partnership with the following projects.
In the heart of Lesotho, a single demountable classroom is home to a specialised school for girls carrying deep trauma. Run by Sapeo, this school provides a lifeline in safety, education and discipleship in a loving environment. But right now, that school is full. A piece of land next door offers the opportunity to expand and offer a place to the girls on the wait list. This is our opportunity to stand in the gap and help secure the future expansion site.
In the shadows of Cambodia's digital spaces and nightlife, children are being exploited every day. Destiny's Rescue is standing in the gap, rescuing children from online sexual abuse and trafficking. Their trained operatives work undercover to bring victims to safety and support them with trauma-enforced care, education, discipleship, and skill training.
In one of the most spiritually challenging and politically complex regions, courageous workers are bringing light to the Middle East. Through our partnership with ACCI Missions Middle East Project, we are helping to provide humanitarian aid, building trusted relationships, and discipling new believers where faith comes at a cost. Your generosity will help us to fund and sustain these frontline missions.
Europe was once the forefront of missions, but today in areas like Germany, Poland and the Czech Republic, these are some of the most atheistic in the world. Steve and Malin Wyndham are Australian missionaries with the ACCI. Their ministry equips and trains church planters in this area. Together, when we stand with them, we sow into a legacy of gospel transformation across Europe.
We want to reach a new generation for Jesus. We're going to upgrade our visual and audio equipment so that we can reach people right where they are, on their phones and in their homes. We must never forget that behind every screen is a soul, somebody ready to encounter Jesus. This upgrade is going to open the front door to our church to further impact the community.
Last year, we redid our Maddington foyer, and what a difference it has made. This year, we plan to renovate our bathrooms and our kitchen so that we can make room for our ever-growing congregation, as well as set us up for the future generations.
For our Byford and our Singleton campuses, we're going to continue to put aside funds for our future buildings. Last year, we completely paid off the land for our Singleton property, and we're going to continue to save to see a beautiful future building built in the heart of Singleton.
In 2024, we took a big step of faith and began the architectural drawings for our Byford home. The good news is that those plans are now complete and fully approved by Council. They have gone out for tender. Church, we are so close. Even though it's been a slow process, we can see the fingerprints of God over the whole project.
For our Narrogin family, we celebrated a huge win at the beginning of this year with the purchasing of our building. Our amazing volunteers worked hard, cleaning, painting, getting it ready for the next season. This year's miracle offering will help us finalise the first phase, which is to fully furnish this space so that our Narrogin family can move into their beautiful, fully functioning venue by the end of the year.
On June 22nd, our whole church is coming together to sacrificially give to these amazing projects. We would love you to prayerfully consider your part in the miracle. I know that God's going to do something great through our church, and we want to thank you ahead of time for your abundant generosity. Isn't that so inspiring? Well, over the last week, I've been really meditating on Nehemiah. This is going to be our passage of scripture for this month. It's a powerful story about how one man with a burden from God and the support of many others was able to achieve an impossible task. For those of you who are not sure of the story of Nehemiah, here's a quick history background for you just to understand the story. The people of Israel had been in exile for more than 100 years. They had turned their backs from the Lord, and the Lord had scattered them throughout the entire Persian Empire. And those who were left in Jerusalem were in a really bad state. And now Nehemiah, he was the cupbearer to the king of Persia. And this is where I want us to pick up our story. Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1 to 4 says this: "While I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men. And I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, those who survived the exile are back in the province, are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. And when I heard these things, I sat down and wept." The first time I read this story, I had one question that burned in my mind, and it's this question: who cares? Who actually cares about walls? Who actually cares about a city that had been exiled and burnt over 100 years before? For Nehemiah, he lived in Susa, which was over 1,000 kilometers from Jerusalem. Who cares? He was probably born in captivity. He probably had never visited Jerusalem in his life. He was living a very comfortable life in the king's palace. Who cares about broken walls thousands of miles away? It wasn't his problem. Somebody else should do something about this. But why does it come to me? Who cares? The answer is God does. God cares. God cares about the welfare of his people. You see, for us, they're walls, but what we need to understand, the walls are extremely symbolic, especially in biblical times. They represent protection and security, but not just physically, but also spiritually. These people were vulnerable. They were open to the enemy's attacks. They were constantly tormented by what could happen to them. These walls are like boundaries that we would have in a family and in a marriage. Without them, we cannot stand. These walls were the protection that people needed to thrive and to live in peace. And God cares for people. And so if it's tormenting his people, if it's causing them hurt and pain, he is moved for something to be done. So God decides to pick an ordinary man and calls him to do an extraordinary task. I love this. It's so encouraging. Here are a couple of lessons that you can learn from this story. Number one, heroes are just ordinary people. They're just ordinary people. Nehemiah was a glorified bartender. He probably had no training in building and construction. He probably had no experience in leading large groups. He had no background in completing mega projects. He was a slave to the king. He was not free to do anything without permission, and yet God chooses this average, normal, ordinary person, this unqualified, this inexperienced, this busy at work person. God chooses him to make him one of the heroes of the faith. When you read this, you should go, you know what? You and I are perfect candidates for God's story of redemption and restoration. You and I are perfect candidates for what God wants to do in other people's lives. You and I are perfect candidates as ordinary people to be used by an extraordinary God to do something powerful in the lives of many, many people. We're not called to live small. We're not called to live average. We're not called to live insignificant. We're not called to live a self-serving existence. God has a powerful plan for your life and your future. Heroes are just ordinary people. But more than that, from this story, you know that heroes are just ordinary people who say yes to the burden of God. They have to say yes to the burden of God. As a young man, I remember someone said to me, when you're close to God, what breaks his heart starts to break yours. It's such a powerful saying. When you're close to God, what breaks his heart starts to break yours. What moves his heart starts to move yours. What is his priority becomes your priority. There's an impartation when you come close, when you're intimate with God, when you worship him. What's on his mind becomes what is in your mind. His priorities become your priorities. There's a fresh concern that rises up for other people, not because you are good, but because he is good and he cares for them. And your intimacy with God causes an impartation of his heart into you. In Luke 10:30-31, there's the story of the Good Samaritan. Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. What an interesting story that Jesus made up, and he purposely used the priest as an example. Why? Because priests were supposed to be close to God. They were supposed to have the heart of God. They were supposed to be ones who were intimate with him. They would worship him. And what is expected is the heart of God is supposed to be imparted into the heart of man through intimacy and worship. But when we look at this priest and we look at his behavior, it gives us insight that although he was supposed to be close, it's obvious that he wasn't, because he didn't care for what God cared for God's beloved. He wasn't moved by what God was moved toward. God's heart is always towards his people. And when you're close to God, what breaks his heart will end up breaking yours. There's a saying, a hard heart causes good eyes to go blind. A hard heart causes good eyes to go blind. When your heart hardens toward God, your eyes are blinded to his burdens. And it's so important that we understand. It's very easy to start believing the lie. It's not my problem. I'm too busy. The problem is too big. I don't have enough to make a difference. This miracle offering, we are tackling some really big issues. Our goal is to eradicate child trafficking in Cambodia. Impossible, right? Our goal is to bring hope to war-torn Middle East. Are you joking? Even the US can't do that. Our goal is to bring Christ back to Europe. Are you joking? That's surely someone else's responsibility. It's on the other side of the world. And yet it matters to God. Therefore, it must matter to us. As people who love God, his heart must become our hearts. You know, one of the missionaries that we'll be supporting in the Middle East, and we can't mention his name, we can't even mention what country they're in. They moved from beautiful Queensland with their young family to this war-torn place because God called them there to make a difference. He showed me a video recently on his iPhone of his backyard. And from his backyard, you can see missiles flying from the neighboring Arab country over to the other Arab country, and missiles from this country blowing that missile out of the air. And he's standing there under this and going, God, you've called me and my young family here. Every time he says, God, we're going to leave, the Lord speaks so clearly to both of them to stay. And by their obedience, supernaturally, they have been protected. They have found favor. They are leading people to Christ. There is protection over their household and their city because of their obedience. God cares for people. He cares. Don't let the impossibility or the overwhelming size of the task cause you to say no or blind your eyes from the call. Take the burden, be obedient, say yes. Heroes are just ordinary people who say yes to the burden of God. But there's more to this equation. Heroes are just ordinary people who say yes to the burden of God by bringing what they have. You've got to bring what you have. Nehemiah chapter 1 verse 4. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. He prayed, he fasted. Why? Because there was nothing else he could do. He was a slave. His master was the king of Persia. He didn't have permission. He didn't have opportunity. He couldn't choose just to leave and go and do what he felt on his heart. All he could do was pray and fast because that's all he had. He didn't just say yes to God. He used what he had. He used his time. He fasted. He prayed until something happened. Have you ever heard the saying, if only I was a millionaire, I would sort that problem out? Well, here's the truth. Even though that sounds really good, it's a cop-out. It's an absolute cop-out. It's an excuse to not do something with what God has already given you. God will never ask you to use something he hasn't entrusted in your hands in the first place. He only wants you to steward what he has placed in your hands. And if you're not faithful with the little, you won't be faithful with the much. But use what you have. I love that Nehemiah didn't say, I'm a slave, I've got no opportunity, I don't have the resource or the permission to go and do what God's called me. Instead of saying and focusing on what he didn't have, he chose to focus on what he did have. And he put that in the hands of God. And here's what I love. God saw it and responded to his faithful obedience. In Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1 to 5, it says this, in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought to him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before. So the king asked me, why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart. I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? Then the king said to me, what is it you want? From that moment, from that one encounter, God softened the heart of the king. God released Nehemiah to do his will. God gave him all the resource that he needed, and he began to put his hand to the plow. I love that. If you don't have what you need, use what you have. And let God do something supernatural. I love chapter 3 in Nehemiah. It's my favorite chapter in the whole book. And for many of you, you may read it and go, what a boring chapter, because it's a list of names that you can't even pronounce. It's long names, weird names, and it's people's names and the place they came from and the area that they chose to build. For me, it is a miracle in progress. I love reading that chapter because it stirs my faith. It's names of hundreds of very different people, all saying yes to the burden of God, all bringing what they had to fulfill God's kingdom. Some built large sections of the wall, others built small spaces just in front of their homes, but everyone did something. It wasn't equal giving, but it was equal sacrifice. It wasn't everyone doing the same thing. No. They had different gifts. They had different resources. They have different talents, but everyone brought what they had. In fact, the phrase that really stands out in chapter 3 is this phrase, next to him, next to them. And it talks about the name of the person, the area they built, and then next to him, and then next to them, and then next to him, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, men and women, ordinary, leaders, gifted, rich, poor, tradies, priests, Levites, perfumers, all working next to him, next to them, next to her. They worked shoulder to shoulder to do what was impossible. As the musicians, please join me in every campus. I'm here to tell you that heroes are just ordinary people who say yes to the burden of God, by bringing what they have and allowing God to do what only He can do. That's what happened. In 52 days, they did the impossible. They rebuilt the wall. They brought hope, dignity, and protection to an entire city. They overcame obstacles. They overcame discouragement. They overcame disunity. They did the impossible. How? Because God was with them, and with God, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. And that's what I've seen time and time again. This whole next to Him, next to them phrase, it just reminds me of our church. Over 19 years, people have just put their shoulder to the plow. Next to them, next to her, next to him, they found the gaps, they rebuilt the wall. Together we have saved orphans, we have planted churches, we have rescued women caught in trafficking. We have done so much to build life and health and bring salvation to thousands of people. Our small church, over 19 years, has impacted tens of thousands of people. Why? Because everyone just brought their gift. It just does my heart, brings so much joy to my heart to see that we can do something impossible with God. You know, this is the case with Joshua and Belinda from Chelliah, who's one of the miracle offering projects that we're going to be sowing into again this year. This couple, they lived in comfortable Canberra. They earned a lot of money. They were happy there. And one day, Belinda was sent to Lesotho for her university. And when she went there, she was just blown away by the need of that city. There was a street children problem where there were literally thousands of kids who had left home. Crime was going through the roof. In fact, it was the Maseru, which is the capital city of Lesotho, had the highest murder rate per capita in the world. And she went to this city, this girl from Canberra, and she saw the need and her eyes were opened. She said, of course it's too far away. I'm an Australian. This is an African problem. This is a citywide problem. I'm just one person. This is too overwhelming. I'm going to go back to my husband. Every time she would come into the presence of the Lord would just impart His burden for these young children. Someone's got to stand for the children. Someone's got to protect them. Someone's got to bring them into family. Someone's got to heal them of their trauma. Someone's got to change the trajectory of the lives of these innocent people. I know it sounds so big. I know it sounds impossible, but I'm calling you, an ordinary Australian person, to stand up and say yes to the burden of Christ, to bring your gift and just watch as God does the rest. Well, you know the story. Many years later, I think it's now 10 years later, they've completely eradicated the street children problem of the entire city. Crime rate has dropped radically. They've taken these children and they've reconnected them with their families. They've trained families how to be families. They've educated these children. Many of them have graduated school now and get full-time jobs. They've helped girls that have been traumatized and got the healing that they need to be able to function well again. And here's the thing, many of these kids now know Jesus, follow the Lord, and the trajectory of their life have been radically transformed. 2 people from Canberra have made a huge life-changing difference to an entire city. We get to be a part of that. But God chooses ordinary people who say yes to His burden and bring what they have, and He does something miraculous with their gift. So that's where we are, church. I want to challenge you this year. Let's say yes to the plans and the burdens of God. Let's say yes. Let's surrender our lives. Let's bring what we have and together do something powerful in the lives of thousands of people. I'd love you all to stand right now in all your campuses. Come on. I just feel like we as a church on this milestone day, our 19th anniversary, need to commit ourselves again to God, need to commit ourselves again to the cause of Christ. Why? Because time is short. Jesus is coming back. The world is desperate, and we are the solution. You and I are the ones. We are the perfect candidate for the kingdom of God's restoration and salvation. Come on, would you stand in this place? We're going to sing this beautiful song together, and then your campus pastor is going to lead you in a prayer of salvation and commitment to the Lordship of Jesus. Let's sing together.